Welcome back, everyone, to America's Mom. I am your host, Sharona Bishop. I'm so excited to be sharing this story with you guys today. We've had an incredible last weekend being around great American legislators, business owners, pastors who understand that our goal right now is to save our country, and this is the time to do it. And it starts with building a strong foundation. I've been talking about the National Association of Christian Lawmakers that's been created to hold them accountable. As we've talked about so much here on America's Mom, we get these great representatives, we get them into office, and then in a couple short years, we cannot even recognize them anymore. They have deviated so far from their original platforms. Well, there is accountability, there is support, and there is foundational principles that are being taught in this organization. And I am extremely excited because I have a dear friend who introduced me to this organization. And those of you in Texas, you know this shining star. She is a beacon of light and hope in the state of Texas. Julie Pickren has been leading the Texas Board of Education, as well as massive amounts of legislation to keep Texas great and help restore the rest of our union. Julie Pickren is joining me today to talk about her endeavors with the Texas State Board of Education, how she's securing education, not just for Texans, but the rest of the country, and the incredible shift she is making with NACL, taking it internationally. Julie, thank you so much for this time. You are such a gem. You are such a light. I know the first time that I met you, I didn't know how we could possibly be friends because you are just so larger than life and constantly running around. But you've made time for me today, and I appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you, Sharona. And truly, the title America's Mom is so fitting for you. God's calling and his grace on your life is just abundant for everyone to see that truly how much you love America and you love family.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. I want to talk about your motivation in politics and how you found yourself in this position. People may not know, you had to win your position in the Texas State Board of Education, not once, not twice, but 3 times in a row. Like the same election, you guys. This was not spread out through years, the same election. Can you talk a little bit about how you got involved in policy in the state of Texas?
Yes, the election for State Board of Education was a little bit like Groundhog Day. Won the primary, had a very crowded primary season because it was an open seat. And so there were several people in the primary. So everybody was saying, Julie, you're going to go to a runoff. You're going to go to a runoff. There's no way you can avoid it. And I was like, you know what? With God's great grace, anything is possible. And so I always whenever I'm in a campaign, I always have faith in the Lord that we're going to win, that we operate from a place of victory, but I always work like I'm always losing. And so we won that primary. It was a clear mandate from the people. We won with well over 50% of the vote in a very crowded primary season, which is difficult. I think in that primary year, I was the only one in a statewide race that did not go to a runoff. So it really was God's great grace.
Mm-hmm.
And so I always say, our hard work plus God's grace is whatever he wants it to be. And so anyways, won a decisive victory then, but then went to the general election. And in the general election, Harris County in Texas is one of the counties that I represent, one of the several counties that I have the honor of representing. And so Harris County, we looked like we won the night of the election because the votes were so strong in the 10,000 square miles that I represent. But so we couldn't announce that we won, even though the numbers were showing that we won. And then Harris County asked for a delay in reporting their numbers to the state of Texas because they said they were having so many problems getting all of their votes tallied. which is a whole nother story in itself, because if you're
Hmm.
running a fully digital election and all the votes are supposed to be counted as, as they're turned into the county that night, and the machines are all tabulated and calculated, it's wild that the county would say, oh, we need another 24 hours, or we need another 48 hours, or we need another 72 hours. So it's kept delaying the announcement. And then several days after the election, when we were preparing to announce, Harris County comes back and says, oh, I mean, this is days after the election, okay? Election's over. We're already in the next week. They come back and they say, no, you can't announce yet because we found a V drive
Oh
with
my
with
gosh.
about 10,000 votes on the V drive. And of course, we hear every vote counts. That's a little bit of misnomer, because there was no chain of command on that V drive while it was missing those several days. But anyways, the county went ahead and counted all of those votes, and Sharona, God is so good, we still won. And so
Yeah, that's incredible story. That's amazing. So they didn't find ballots; they found a drive, a thumb drive, a V
yes,
drive, and just decided they were going to add all of those votes, and yet still did not prevail. Tell me,
yes,
God doesn't have a plan.
yes.
Hmm.
Just President Trump's words of, you're going to win so many times, you're going to get tired of winning. I felt that way just from my primary season through the general election. I said, Lord, we won this election now 5 times in 1 year.
This is and this is the kind of grit. This is why you're such a powerful woman, and I want people to hear from you, because in throughout all of that, you maintain joy and confidence and belief God's will is going to prevail, and you're so gritty. You're so tough. In the state of Texas, all around the country, people are hearing about incredible legislation that's being passed to protect our children and to
Absolutely.
advance rigor, put rigor back, really help our kids to be truly educated in the state of Texas. I want to talk about some of those victories that you've had in the legislature. How are you empowering and strengthening the real education in the state of Texas?
Oh my goodness, we have had a lot of victories. Just in my own personal experience, I have had the honor of either advising, helping to author, helping to write, or help passing over 100 pieces of education legislation in states across America. And so,
That's incredible.
the core of it, the core of everything that I assist with, of great legislation that I assist with, you have to know your core values. It's the big buzzword right now is you have to know your why.
Mhm.
Okay. Well, my why has been my core for my entire life. It is faith, it is family, and it is freedom. So legislation that promotes the people's right to free assembly, right? A constitutional right, a God-given right,
Mhm.
okay? That's number one, representing God in the marketplace. I'm a businesswoman also, representing God's ways and policy and business, representing God in government, and representing God in everything that we do. You can't separate me from my Christian values and my
Mhm.
Christian beliefs,
Right.
right?
Mhm.
That's the foundation, is our faith, my belief in Jesus. My Christianity is my number one. That's my foundation. Then it's family, protecting parents' rights. Psalm 127 in the Bible says that children are a blessing from God. In Psalm 127, God was talking to parents and to family. He was not talking to government. But unfortunately, right now, what we are seeing in America is, this whole my truth, your truth. Well, if my
Yeah.
truth differs from your truth, then one of us is lying. We
Mhm.
can't both, if we are differing, we cannot both be in truth.
Mhm.
Okay. One
Yeah.
of us has to not be in truth. And so, anyways, in America, we are at a fundamental crossroads in policy and education policy at the state legislature level, even what's happening in the past with the United States Department of Education, and at our
Mhm.
local school board levels, that the foundation has a seismic shift in it. And that shift in the foundation of rules and policies and implementation is, who does the child belong to?
Incredible question, because that really is on the ballot. I mean, this is what's happening in the state of Colorado, California, Washington, Oregon. Does the state have more power over your children if they are, specifically if they're involved in the public education system? But do they have more power and more say than the parent does? And fundamentally, you say absolutely not.
Absolutely not. Because again, as a believer, we go back to the Word of God, and we know firmly that God, right, whether you recognize the Bible, the Old Testament scriptures as the Torah, whether you recognize it as the Word of God, as the Bible, whatever you look at, original text, which spans many religions, right? It crosses many religious boundaries and many cultural boundaries. There are very few cultures and very few religions that would actually come forward and say that children belong to the government. And in my mind, there's really only two that I've ever ran across or identified. One of those is called secular humanism, okay, right? That
Mhm.
believes that man is God, and then, right, then it's very easy to transfer your rights to the government. The other is communism. That's the only two people groups, political groups, belief groups that I've ever found that believe that children belong to the government. And so the belief that children belong to their parents and that parents have the inherent right to guide the moral upbringing, the education, the direction of their child's lives, that spans cultural lines and spans religion and crosses religious barriers. So really we're getting back to the heart of America, is that family is the cornerstone of civilization. But unfortunately, we've seen, like I said, in local, state, and even in the former U.S. Department of Education, the foundation, policy, and rules have been built on the foundation that children belong to the government. But that is the slippery slope of communism, and it is a hard clawback if we go down that route.
I- in that spirit, we have this, Linda McMahon, who has taken over as the Secretary of Education for the
Amazing
country,
woman.
doing phenomenal things. What
Mhm.
has her role really done so far that's impacted the rest of the country? What has actually changed by her being in that position?
Well, from a state elected position, really, she is doing a phenomenal job, because really education is a states' rights issue. The
Mhm.
idea that we ever federalized education is just wrong on many levels. The first way that it's wrong is that you have this huge bureaucracy that's kind of always looming over your states, that this bureaucracy that is titled US Department of Education has never educated one child in America.
Mhm.
So when you have this multi-billion dollar bureaucratic agency that loves to impose rules from the federal government on how to educate children, has never educated a child, that would be
Yeah.
it's so illogical. There's no common sense in that. And then the other great thing that Linda has done is really around Title IX. People don't understand how oppressive the Obama was the first one to, now that we know, illegally try to change Title IX to apply to boys who identify as girls. And then Biden came back and tried to do it the correct way, but the Supreme Court, tried to do it the correct way through rulemaking authority at the Department of Education. But then the U.S. Supreme Court came and struck it all down, because the U.S. Supreme Court said it was in direct conflict with the original 1972 Title IX that was passed by Congress. Because if you extend Title IX rights to a biological male, you are effectively undoing Title IX.
Mhm.
And so Secretary McMahon has just been incredible in this space. She has directed her Office of Civil Rights within the U.S. Department of Education to really take a correct view of Title IX, right? The legal view of Title IX, how it was passed in 1972 by Congress, instead of how the Biden administration and the Obama administration was weaponizing Title IX against your states and against your local ISDs to really intimidate and bully us into forcing their now illegal version of Title IX. Whenever I was a school board trustee in 2015-16 timeframe, is when Obama first threatened that if we did not make our locker rooms and restrooms gender neutral and adjust our Title IX policy to fit his illegal version, that they were going to withhold federal funding from our school district. And so this has been weaponized and used as an intimidation factor for almost 10 years now from the radical left. And so I am so thankful for a Secretary of Education that says that we are going to stand up, and we are going to stand up for lawfulness, not lawlessness.
Mhm.
And the Department of Education, while it's in existence, is going to do everything they can to uphold the law and not try to make law, but operate in a spirit of lawfulness.
And it's a fascinating thing too, just under the Obama Biden era, when the school boards were weaponized, the NEA was weaponized against parents who were speaking out against policies that were being mandated by the federal government. We saw how the centralizing of our education system allowed for them to dictate the practices that were going on, using ESSER funds throughout COVID to force comprehensive sex education to be implemented
Hmm.
throughout the country, even in states that weren't doing it at that time. So it's interesting to listen to people. I'm hearing it less and less and less, actually, from the left, that this is such a bad thing about decentralizing and taking that power away from the federal government, giving it back to the states to control what happens there. But that was a reality of what happens when we turn over all of our power, all of our own authority, our state authority, our personal authority, our parental right authority to the government. And they came for parents. They came for them,
Yes, you lived it.
yeah, yeah. And so many others, who don't
Uh-huh.
have a voice, don't have a platform. But you've also been instrumental in passing laws in Texas to bring the Bible back into the classroom, the Ten
Yes.
Commandments on every school ground, making sure children are actually safe in every school in the state of Texas through making sure that teachers and those who can and will are carrying and protecting our kids, and a return to rigor. Can you talk a little bit about that as it pertains to the excellence of America?
Yes, so academic rigor, we have seen a sharp decline in academic rigor, where even since I started serving in education about 15 years ago. Whenever you hear that the great industrial titans, the great titans of industry, right? The Carnegies, the Mellons, the Vanderbilts, whenever you hear that they built these great business empires with a sixth grade education or a seventh grade education, that really is a misnomer, because we ran the data, and a sixth grade to an eighth grade education in the education system of that time during the industrialization of America would really be equivalent today to just shy of a master's degree in college. So you can see
Wow.
how far academic standards have fallen. If you
Wow.
look at the New England Primer, which was the very first textbook in America, the most widely used textbook in American history, and the longest running textbook in American history, when you open it up on day one, the first day of school, they are learning the 23rd Psalms in Latin and then in English. And whenever you go through the textbook, every lesson is in Latin first and then in English. So when you look at day one of kindergarten today, right? Think about it.
Yeah.
It's a box of crayons, it's some worksheets. It's really just trying to, and a lot of times, unfortunately, a lot of times it's just trying to teach kids how to color inside of a shape without going outside the lines.
Mhm.
And I'm not saying this is everywhere. I'm saying some schools do education with excellence and do it very well. I'm talking about for the broad knowledge, okay?
The majority.
Right, for the majority. So whenever you look at it that way, that's the way they're starting their first day of kindergarten. They're starting the first day of kindergarten, just really kind of orientating children to the building, showing them where to go to the classroom. Teachers are still tying shoelaces. Teachers, right? It's like it's a very different world than if you go back to when education truly was great in America, right? Whenever we had a very highly educated population, where the first day of school is learning the Bible in Latin and learning English, learning Latin first, and then learning the correlation to English to build a strong vocabulary foundation for kids.
And also the actual meaning of words, the real application, and the power of words, of language, of communication that is not been emphasized in
Absolutely.
education.
Harvard just released, golly,
Mm.
Harvard. In Texas, we have a saying that says, just can't get right. I'm telling you, Harvard
Mhm.
just can't get out of their own way. But Harvard right now, a few months ago, they issued a study. And in that Harvard study, they were talking about the remediation courses they're having to offer now in English because of the lack of reading skills of incoming freshman classes. So you're talking about Harvard University, which is really supposed to be the top 1% of students in America accepted to Harvard, or accepted from, internationally into Harvard. And then you have the premier university in the United States of America talking about the number of remedial classes they're having to offer because their incoming freshman class cannot read a complete novel or a complete book on Western literature.
Hmm.
So this is wild to think that your best and your brightest can't read a novel or Western literature.
Makes no sense. It really makes no sense. And so that is shifting in the state of Texas, and the tools are being
It
provided to the
is.
schools. Like what we know, what we expect from our kids, they will rise. They will rise to the occasion. We have, history that demonstrates that for us.
Absolutely.
You're a mom. You're
You know, I am. God has really blessed my husband and I. I thought all children learn how to read at about 1 year old. So
yeah.
I,
Well,
I didn't have any reference. I was an older
I
mom
know.
and
Great.
I just thought that was normal. But yes, children will rise to the occasion. There is nothing, there is no evidence, there is nothing to show scientifically, medically, to show that children in 2025 have a lower IQ than children in 1900, right? What has changed is adult expectations of what is expected in education, what is expected of children. Children are just as bright from all walks of life. The children have wonderful IQs, have great learning capabilities. They're little sponges. Whatever you put in front of them, they want to soak up knowledge. There's an innate desire inside of children to learn. They want to expand their knowledge. And so that's the joy of teaching. That's where our teachers come in. The joy of teaching come in is the dissemination of knowledge. But children today, they are the same as children 100 years ago or 125 years ago. They are capable. What has changed is the adults in the room have changed their level of expectations of education. It's
Hmm.
just been lowered and lowered and lowered and lowered. And we have really done a great disservice, not only to children, but a great disservice to our society. Because, the America economy, we are dependent on a knowledgeable society. We are dependent on a knowledgeable workforce. I mean, it is a national security reasons why you want a literate,
Hmm.
functioning population.
Hmm.
And so we've just really done a great disservice to ourselves. But Texas is leading on changing that. We released the Blue Bonnet instructional materials last year, where Texas now is a developer, writer, and publisher of instructional materials. And I am so proud to say that we have brought academic rigor back to the classroom.
Can't wait to. And, right now we're literally at Liberty University,
We
the
are.
prestigious Christian campus that is educating courageous believers to go out into the world and do amazing things again. And it's kind of an incredible. It is an incredible opportunity to see this firsthand, but to understand that we can't leave education. And I have to say, I am one of those people who has said, I'm not willing to risk putting my children in university or sending them off to college and risking everything I've done for the last 18 years being undone in their minds and their souls and their hearts and for their eternity. And so being here at this campus and being exposed to this association, National Association of Christian Lawmakers, is really giving me a whole nother perspective. You have been a part of NACL, promoting what they've been doing. And as always, with everything you touch, Julie, they say everything's bigger in Texas. Everything she touches just gets bigger and it grows and God blesses it. And it's this incredible impact that you have. Tell us a little bit about NACL and then the expansion that you are bringing to this organization to empower and embolden nations all around the world.
Well, I was so excited a few years ago to be invited by Senator Jason Rapert to become a member of the National Association of Christian Lawmakers. And so they have just done incredible work. The association is about 4 years old. Governor Mike Huckabee was instrumental in the formation of it, and like I said, Senator Jason Rapert was the founder and the head of it. And so, in 4 years, they have passed hundreds of policies centered around faith, family, and freedom across the nation. I mean, God's blessing on this organization, whether you're part of the organization or not, when you look at the amount of policy that is being passed out of this organization that promotes faith, family, and freedom, you have to see the hand of God with this organization, because it is incredible the amount of policy that has been passed. But it is made up of lawmakers, Christian lawmakers from the state and federal. Now we are accepting lawmakers from the county level. So If you are a Christian and you have been promoting faith, family, freedom policy in your area or in your state, I invite you to join National Association of Christian Lawmakers. We just have an incredible organization that provides support, provides advice, provides help on helping you to win at your local, state, or national level.
And this is really powerful too, because as we've seen in the last 5 years, so many that are sprouting up right now, we're new to politics, we're new to this game, as they like to call it, and it can really beat you down. And you can start finding yourself making compromises because you just want to get a bill passed, or honestly, you want to do something for the people that have elected you. And what I've heard over and over again at this particular conference is stories of people digging in, reaching out because of this organization. They were not on their own. They were empowered. They knew they're not alone, and they can do this. They can eventually win. I think of the story of the senator and delegate from Maryland, and justly and aptly winning in their district. They have the confidence and trust of the people, and introducing the heartbeat bill in the state of
In
Maryland.
Maryland. Can you imagine?
No,
I
no,
know.
I could not. I was like, that's amazing. But it's been because of the courage and the support that this organization
Yes.
brings.
So this organization, we are not just a, meet for 2 or 3 days, one time a year, then everybody go about their merry way, right? This isn't, just a trip to a wonderful place like Liberty University. This is a group of Christian lawmakers who we love the work. We do the work. We love the work. We know the benefits for the people and the blessings that will fall on the people, the level of freedom that will happen for the people if we go and champion and win on behalf of the people that elected us. And so that is the prize. The prize is not passing a bill or, that's not the prize. The prize is the freedom that it brings to people. The prize is that your districts at home or your state or your nation, now businesses have a place to thrive. People have a way, small business has a way, families have a way to have economic freedom, liberty, because now small business can thrive. The win is that in our districts at home, children are educated, families have confidence in sending their kids to safe schools, and kids are educated, and that family knows that that child will have a great education so they can live their American dream. And the parents don't have to worry about the success of their children because the education system is failing them. The confidence is that women know that they are protected and they are safe because of the policies that come out of this organization, that women at the local, state, and national level, when we do have a win, that women know that their American dream is protected. They're not going to have to compete with a man who is playing dress up and pretending to be a woman. They're not going to have to compete with somebody who is experiencing a mental health crisis for what is their American dream. Their American dream is protected under equal rights, not special rights, which is what the other people are asking for. But that's the big win. I mean, it's always great to pass a piece of legislation. It's always fun to go to a governor's bill signing and, do all of that and have the celebrations, everything. But really the true win is the people win. Anytime that the constitutional rights of the individual citizen is protected, and when government is pulled back so that people can flourish and bloom and grow, that is the big win.
You've been well aware of what's going on in Europe. You have a great relationship with George Simeon and several of the MPs there in Romania who just endured an unbelievable upside down election. The election had been annulled previously by the Supreme Court, literally just thrown out, which is unheard of in a democracy. And then this last election was, they felt very much that this election was not a real election. And so they were invited, you brought them here to the NACL, the first international members or diplomats to come and be a part of this organization. Can you talk about the expansion of NACL internationally, which is your vision, to help produce not just great relationships and connections as you're talking about, but fundamentally to build the love of freedom and liberty to nations that are truly just coming out from under communism?
Yeah, so I am the now chairwoman of the National Association of Christian Lawmakers International Relations Committee. And so it's so fitting with my husband and I, with our life and what we do and what we believe, through business relationships and what have you. My husband and I have led a very international lifestyle. I mean, personally, I have visited and gone to over 40 countries now. And so, whenever I was talking with Senator Raypert about considering an international arm, uh, God love him. He was like, "Okay, Julie, tell me, what does this look like? What is this? What walk me through this?" And basically, whenever you travel internationally, you realize that people are really the same all over the world because God puts a craving of freedom inside of everybody. Everybody wants to be free. There are things, regardless of borders, regardless of religion, people inherently what they want is they want to be free. They want their children to have opportunity, and they want to know that their children will remain free.
Mhm.
So, on those, and they want freedom to worship. So, those core beliefs really unite people across the globe. And so, when I've traveled, like I said, to over 40 countries now, and talked with world leaders in many of those countries,
Mhm.
national leaders in many of those countries, it's the same concepts of what we enjoy in our US Constitution. Sharona, the United States Constitution, in my humble opinion, is one of the most beautiful, God inspired documents in the history of mankind. And that is why all of us, whether you're elected, whether you are an individual, we all should fiercely defend the United
Mhm.
States Constitution.
100%.
But
Mhm.
around the world, they don't get the freedoms and the God given protections that we enjoy as Americans under the United States Constitution. But world leaders in other countries, they recognize the need for policies that promote faith, family, and freedom. And so there are a lot of Christian elected officials around the world that really do not enjoy the cover of the US Constitution like we do as Americans. And also, they do not have the support system of an association to come alongside with them and to pray with them. As an elected official, I can tell you some of the most important times in my life is when we're literally, as they say, on the battlefield, right? We're fighting for a great policy. We're fighting great opposition for a great policy to be enacted. And I get a phone call at midnight at night from a friend or a pastor saying, "Julie, can I just pray with you?"
Mm.
Those are the moments that you truly remember. And so that's what we want to do for our Christian elected officials internationally, is we just want to be that hand of support and that prayer and that the support for them, and then also the mentoring for them, right? we
Yes.
have we have won a lot, as President Trump would say, we have won bigly, right? We are winning bigly, okay? And so they look at us for hope.
Mhm.
America truly is, once again, we truly are the beacon of light on the hill of freedom
Mhm.
for the whole world
Yes.
again.
Mhm.
And so we need to come along and we need to do whatever we can to support them, to help them, to pray for them, to pray for these Christian lawmakers. We've talked about before, in Africa, there's great persecution right now of Christians in Africa. But there are still elected Christians in parts of Africa where the people are being persecuted. So those elected officials they're feeling the weight of, my goodness, my parishioners in my district are being slaughtered, right? But I'm a Christian, I'm elected, what can I do?
Mhm.
So what NACL is doing with our international expansion is, just like I said, we're coming along, we're going to provide some supports, we're going to pray with you, we're going to mentor you, we're going to help you bring all of your Christian lawmakers together in your country, so that in the individual countries they can assemble their own association,
Yes.
so that they can promote policies that bring freedom to people, that protect people's religious liberty and protect their faith, and that also empower the family and recognize parents' rights and really do everything they can to support the family.
What do you think is the most critical component for freedom?
The most critical component for freedom, oh my, I don't think you can really pinpoint it solely to one thing. As a Christian, it is a firm belief for me in the Word of God, right? It is, there's two facets to this. You asked me such a deep question. I'm going to give you a little bit of a deep answer. There's two facets of this, right? there is what you're promoting, which is freedom, right? Which we know as a civilization, and we also know from the Bible that family is the cornerstone of all civilization. So, in a very simplistic answer, I'm going to say that policies that promote family, right, that promote parents' rights, that push the government back on interfering with families, is and the parents' rights to choose the direction of their children. That is one of the bedrocks of promoting freedom. The other, of course, is religious liberty, allowing people to freely worship God how they choose, and freedom to assembly. That is huge. That was one of the biggest, um, gre- um, one of the worst things that could have happened in America's history during
Mhm.
the COVID shutdowns, when we shut down our churches.
Mhm.
When we allowed liquor stores to open and churches were shut down, that sent a clear message on what government felt like was important and not important. So we really need to pass protections in a lot of states to make sure that never happens again, because the right to assemble and the right to worship God should never be infringed upon.
Mhm.
And so, really promoting that, promoting people's rights to worship God and to freely assemble, promoting and protecting the family, and then also just allowing for economic development.
Mhm.
You know, so many places in the world, the corruption happens on the business side, on the economic development and the business side. And so, you know, in Texas, we enjoy a high level of freedom. One of the stools, the legs on the stool of that freedom is the fact that the vast majority, I believe it's over 98% of the businesses in Texas are small business, right?
Right.
1 to 100 employees, small business. So whenever you have an economic system that really promotes small business and promotes individual ownership of businesses and family owning businesses, then you see economic freedom develop in areas. And then you see a buy-in from people of, you know, I really do want my schools safe. I really do want my community safe. I don't really want all these riots in the streets, because if my business is destroyed, if my small family business is destroyed, that's my family's livelihood. And so, you know, I kind of do want safety in my area. You know, the with the churches, you know, when the churches have a seat at the table, when the freedom of assembly and the freedom of worship is truly protected, then all of a sudden the churches get together. The churches say, you know, we do want safer communities, we do want a safer state, we do want a safer nation, because we want to protect our right to assemble.
Mhm.
And so it's just whenever you empower people, when you empower the individual, and whenever you empower the family, all of a sudden everybody, as we would say, has skin in the game. And now it's not the government always kind of ruling and brooding over people to give them their rights. Now it's the people rising up and saying, we love this freedom. We want to do everything we can to protect this freedom. We want the freedom to own our own business and to provide economically for our kids and our grandchildren, and provide a legacy business for our children to walk into. We want that freedom. We want that freedom of our church and to be able to assemble and worship how we want. So now it's a whole nother level in a country when the people are demanding the freedom. And
Absolutely.
so
Yeah.
that's what I kind of took a wide detour there, but that's what the goal of the International NACL is to help countries to develop their own version of NACL, where they can bring all of their Christian lawmakers together to pass great policies.
That is where I'm really wanting to get to with this international expansion, because the idea of freedom in America is so different than the idea of freedom abroad. They have choices. We have freedom. We create the options here in America.
That's right.
They're given choices. Pick this one or pick this one. That's not real freedom, but
That's
that's
right.
something that is innate in many of us here in America, especially if you've run a little, whether it's been a little business, a little cart shop, or a food truck, or a massive company. You learn you get to be the creator and the designer and the developer of your life.
That's
That is
right.
not so abroad, especially as we're watching the European Union really co- collapse, honestly, from where I'm sitting. I mean, it's a hard, tough time over there, but what you're
Yes.
bringing and what you're offering is, I've heard somebody describe it as the pastoral presence or ministering presence, where maybe you're not emphatically preaching the Bible, but God's presence there is the X factor. He causes things to grow, He causes things to expand. And the blessing that you've had, I mean, it's a testimony of that ministering presence, and how everything you touch, it multiplies, it grows, it turns into beautiful things. I mean, how do you explain it otherwise?
You can't. There is no other explanation other than the blessings of God. There's no other way. As Christians, we believe that, you know, the Lord calls us to do difficult and extraordinary things, right? And that's why I love the verse in the Bible, Ephesians 3:20, that says that the Lord can do exceedingly and abundantly above anything I could ever ask or think, above anything Julie could ever ask or think, because through a prayer, the Lord has opened doors where I'm like, I mean, I've gone to God in my prayer life and said, Lord, I don't know. This is huge. Like, I don't know. I don't see how we get from A to B to C to D. I can't see the clear path. But what I promise you, Lord, is that if you open the door, I'll walk through it. And then just through that obedience, just through that walking through doors, all of a sudden I'm all the way at X, Y, and Z. I'm already at the end and I'm looking back at point A and thinking, okay, now how did we get here? But I mean, I know how we got there with the power of God. But anyways, but that is, I think that verse is not just a verse to increase our faith, but it's also a Bible verse to increase our obedience. Because when God calls you to big things, right, which he does, he puts dreams and desires in our hearts. When he says, when he knits us in our mother's womb, he puts our dreams and desires and our goals inside of us. And so God calls us to do big things. But Ephesians 3:20 says when he calls you to do that big thing, you have to trust him, because we cannot think sometimes in our life, we can't think as big as God has the plans for us, right? So our small thinking says, oh, you're going to land here. But really, the dreams and desires of goals and that God has implanted in us from our mother's womb says, no, you're going to land here. So we have to trust him. So sometimes I'm like, Lord, I can't, I'm telling you straight, I've actually prayed this before. I've said, Lord, I understand what you're wanting. I can't think that big yet, but I'm going to trust you for that. Now that was prayers a long time ago when I was first starting on this beautiful journey, on this incredible journey of education. That was prayers quite a while back. But I couldn't think. My thinking didn't get me there. I had to trust Ephesians 3:20. I had to trust that the Lord knew the exceedingly and abundantly above anything that I could ask or think was possible. And so that's where we're at now, because we have just like I said, the Blue Bonnet Materials in Texas truly falls under Ephesians 3:20.
Incredible.
To have Texas become a national publisher of instructional materials, to have it use the Old Testament and the New Testament for the enrichment of knowledge, to really just bring a strong foundation and a greater depth of knowledge of why does Western literature say this, and is it written this way? Why do we have baby Moses' laws? Why are our rights God-given? Why do we have Good Samaritan laws? Whenever you don't understand the why, your knowledge is very shallow, right? They say it's right a mile wide and an inch deep. But that's not the type of knowledge that we need in society for America to continue in American greatness. The type of the knowledge that we need for American greatness is a true depth of knowledge. Because when you know your why, when you know the why we have these laws and why our court system is set up this way, and why we don't have a king, why we have a president and not a kingdom. When you know these whys, then you're not movable, you're not shakable. Right? The winds of socialism can blow and you're steadfast. The winds of communism can blow and you're steadfast. You're not moving because you're like a tree that has very deep roots. You know why you believe what you believe. And so no matter which way, what attack is coming against America, or what attack is coming against the American dream to steal our God-given freedoms and to steal our children's future, you're not moving because you understand, you have the depth of knowledge to understand the importance of God-given rights and our entire American structure.
And this is why I am falling in love with National Association of Christian Lawmakers, because this kind of depth, this kind of knowledge and wisdom is what we are needing. We need mentorship in our lawmakers. We need connection with Christians who are supporting and elevating each other and bringing these truths to the reality, the laws that we're passing or the bills we're presenting or the culture we're creating in our own communities. And Julie, you're a leader in this. Thank you so much. Thank you for
Yeah,
all that you've
thank
given
you.
today. I would want to just ask you in closing, there are people listening right now who are like, that's great, Julie, but there's so every day I'm bombarded with all of the news that, there's war here, there's trauma here, we've got riots here, all these things are happening. I don't even know where to start to get into the headspace that you're talking about right now. How would you counsel someone, or how would you mentor someone who is like, I want what you're talking about and I want to be effective? Where do I start? What's the first step?
The first step for me in everything I do, because I am a Christian before I'm anything, the first thing for me is the Word of God, right? Pull out your Bible. If you don't have a Bible, there's wonderful Bible apps. Everybody can carry the Bible with them 24/7 on their cell phone or tablet, okay? Go back to the Word of God and really study who God says you are. When God says you're a daughter of the King, you're a son of the King, right? You're a brother and sister with Jesus. You're joint heirs with Jesus. Really go back to with who God says you are. When God says you are the crown jewel of all creation, mankind, how much the Lord loves us. John 3:16, for God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son, that whoever believes in him will not perish but have eternal life. That love for God, for mankind, is that if you were the only person ever born, God still would have gave his only begotten son for you. That's the type of love in the Word of God and from God for the individual. And so, first, go back to the Word of God. Second, I would say connect to a church. Connect to a church because, things are always coming at us to tear us down, to tell us we're not good enough, we're not smart enough, we're not pretty enough, we're not successful enough, we're not rich enough. The world is constantly telling you you're not enough, but God always says you're enough. And so find a church with like-minded people and like-minded faith to keep you strong, because that's the messaging 24/7 from the world, is all of our shortcomings, where we're not enough, but we are enough in him. And so find a group of people of faith and like-minded faith that can really keep you strong, that can come along and pray with you and support you. I say, as women, we have our little groups, right? I have my group of what I call my pray up friends. Whenever life is hitting you hard, if you call one of those people, they're going to give you all the reasons on why you can win and why you can succeed. That's your pray up friends, right? That's your church family. That's what should be your church family. And then I would say I always have my friends that that you just like, you're feeling low, or you're feeling like, well, I'm gonna come my Texas talk, right?
Yeah.
Lower than a snake's belly, as we would say. And you want someone just to kind of be there with you and kind of lick your wounds with you. Okay. But really, your most successes come whenever you hang with what I call your pray up friends, your people that are going to keep you encouraged. Develop a network around you of people that understand God's calling in your life and what the Lord has called you to do, and keep those people very close to you, okay? Because you're going to need them. And then also, just know that the fight is worth it. It's worth it. It's worth it for America. It's worth it for our children. It's worth it for our grandchildren. It's worth it to protect the United States Constitution. The fight is worth it, because once you lose freedom, it's very hard to get it back. And so that's just my encouragement. And as a Christian, I always say, keep your eyes on Jesus, because you're going to see right in the book of Psalm, it says you may see 1,000 fall at your side and 10,000 at your other side, but you keep on going. You keep your eyes on God, because things happen. Bad things in life happen. I'm not telling you I have a perfect life. You don't have a perfect life. Things happen in our life, but we got to keep the main thing, the main thing. And the main thing is the love of God and the love of Jesus. And so keep your eyes on him. Do your very best not to get distracted, and then just trust God that he will fulfill the goals, desires, and dreams that he put inside of you when you were in your mother's womb.
Julie Pickren, thank you so much. And thank you for all that you're doing to expand freedom, faith, family, and liberty to the rest of the world.
Mhm.
Thank you all for being with us today. We'll be back soon.
All right. Well, I'm so glad you guys got to be a part of this conversation today on America's Mom. Julie Pickren, of course, is one of the most incredible mothers, incredible women for certain. And the words that she is admonishing us with, she absolutely lives by. The part I want to focus on for just a moment as we wrap up our time together today is the fight is worth it. I don't know about you, but I'm looking through social media. I'm on X. I'm seeing all the same things that you guys are seeing. And I'm thinking there is quite a sabotage effort going on right here to make us all think and believe that it's not worth trying to save our country. I'm hearing things like just let it burn. Our enemies need to destroy us. I mean, I'm seeing and reading some of the most unbelievable things on the internet. And by accounts, by social media accounts that I have believed are pro America. No matter what has gone on, we already recognize the failures of America. In fact, Barack Obama and Michelle Obama spent their entire time in office telling us how horrible we are. Right, that's already happened. My fear is that some of you, even on the conservative right, have actually bought into that narrative. America has done more good for everyone in this world than any other country that has ever existed, period. We give more money. We are more generous by far. President Trump has demonstrated that over and over and over by asking other nation states to please pay your part. Help us out a little bit. America needs a little bit of support right now. We just got done with the communist regime of Biden. We came out of those 8 years of Barack Obama, slowly dripping and decimating our country as well. That narrative, though, of America is not good. America does not deserve to exist. America should just be destroyed by her enemies in order to start over, needs to end. That's not a nation that was established by God, if you're talking that way. This is a country where God had an idea. He had a plan and he implemented it through 56 men and countless many other citizens during that time who caught the same vision, and they were willing to go to war for what they believed in, that we should have a place where ideas can prosper, where we are free to self-determine. We can pick where we live, what house we buy, what car we drive, what horse we had at the time, whatever it is, what business you want to start. It was about freedom. What religion do you want to be? How do you want to exercise that religion? What do you want to say? Do you have things that you want to say? You have the right to do that. Do you have the ability to take down a government, to replace your government when you don't like, when you're done with them, when they're not representing you constitutionally anymore? There were basic values and principles that were established in the founding of this country that have not changed, no matter how deep the deep state is. And you all know that I believe that. I know it firsthand. I know the deep state exists. That's not a reason to want to demo our entire country. And so, for those of you who are thinking in your minds, we just need to tear this thing down and start over, I disagree wildly. Our country has been set up based off of the Constitution to be able to have a restart as needed, no matter how deep that deep state gets. And I want to encourage you to join with me in believing, and not only believing, but in working, because faith without actions is dead, right? We have to have action behind this admonition that America is great. America was founded for greatness, and it is the greatest nation that has ever existed. She will live far beyond me and you, and she will be here into the generations to come to advance freedom, to advance self-determination, to advance family, to advance ideas, principles, and the most meaningful thing of all, to advance salvation to this world. So I want to encourage you, please stop listening to the rhetoric. And honestly, any account that is putting stuff like that out, I literally just delete and block. I'm not going to listen to people say our country deserves to be destroyed. It's not true. There are a few people in this country that are doing shady stuff. And I've talked about them: Pompeo, Lindsey Graham, Mike Pence. I've talked about them. Why are they doing what they're doing? I don't know. I don't know why they're betraying President Trump. I don't know why they're making backdoor deals and running a parallel shadow government. I don't know why they're doing that. I don't know why the CIA has unlimited capabilities and access beyond our country, beyond our government. I don't know why they have a black budget that nobody gets to see. I don't know all the projects they're involved in. That's true, but I know God. And I know that the Lord is a man of war. Exodus 15:3. That's my verse this year. The Lord is a man of war, and he is not going to be humiliated and shamed by those who claim to follow him, who are doing things like I just described. I don't know why they're doing it, but I know that God is just, and I know that he's watching out for us. I live as though, and Julie said it in this interview, Julie Pickren, I live as though it's all up to God, up to me, knowing full well it's all up to God. We are required to be people of action, to defend and protect what we say we love and believe. We're not leaving it up to government. We're not leaving it up to anybody else. And if God has put that stirring in your belly to do something, we're going to have a lot of action for you to be doing here in the coming weeks. So I want you to please be watching here on America's Mom. We're going to have breaking news, I hope, very, very, very soon. Action steps that you're going to be able to take to support this administration and even U.S. attorney generals as they fight to secure elections across this country. Mike Lindell just finished the unbelievable and absolutely incredible and historic trial. It was a historic trial, and I'll tell you why. It was established that just because you say somebody said something mean about you, you get to ruin their life, ruin their business, and take everything they have. It was established. No, this is still America. The First Amendment is light and bright and loud as ever. You're not going to be able to take that away, Eric Coomer and Dominion voting machines, just because y'all are a couple of babies and you have been caught. You have been found out for the criminal and psychopath you are, Eric Coomer. And yes, that's not allegedly, it is a fact. There was so much evidence that was not allowed to be heard in this trial. The jury was not allowed to hear about the type of man and the character that Eric Coomer lacks and who he is, what he possesses. It's not anything that people would be rallying for, nor would they want to fund it to the tune of $2.3 million either. I want to point out a couple of things about Mike Lindell's trial, though, that may be being missed by the larger market, because a lot of people just waited and have been waiting for the last 3.5 years for the downfall of Mike Lindell. Isn't that interesting? People who are successful, thriving, passionate, courageous, freedom lovers, you have this subsect, even the conservatives who sit there like sharks in the bloody water, piranhas, just waiting to get that pound of flesh from you. And they sit there and they wait. They wait to be able to say, you lost. And that's what I saw in the headlines floating around. They did not take the time to look at the actual findings of this jury, the actual decisions that were made by this jury. Number one, MyPillow 100% exonerated. So it was MyPillow, Frank Speech, and Mike Lindell all being sued for defamation as Mike's companies. Okay, each one of them were being sued independently. Each one of them had a duty to, by the jury of the trial, to actually assess and determine what kind of pain or grievance had been administered by them to this Eric Coomer, who is a public figure, by the way, as a VP of Dominion voting machines. Public figure alert. Hello. If you're a public figure, get ready. People find out how bad you are. They're going to come for you. Okay, they're going to come for you on the internet. I don't know what happened in Eric's upbringing, why he wasn't taught to let words flow off his back, but you and I both know it wasn't about that. It was about Dominion voting machines shaking the money tree to silence Mike Lindell, the loudest voice in the country, talking about elections and our stolen, rigged elections. So MyPillow 100% exonerated. No malice, no crime, no defamation, period. Everybody out there who has canceled MyPillow, all the big box stores who pulled Mike Lindell's MyPillow store and employee-owned store out of your stores, out of your big box markets, bring them back. You're no longer going to have to worry that you're going to be sued for doing business with them. It's time to bring MyPillow back, a great American manufacturer. Get them back in your store. They are innocent completely. The jury said, no, 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 no. MyPillow did nothing. Bye. Bye, Felicia. Eric, you're a loser on that one, 100%. Then we have Mike Lindell as a person. There were multiple counts. They were citing, I think, over 9 or 12 counts of defamation, words that Mike Lindell said related to Eric Coomer. And apparently they found 2 that they felt were defamatory, but Mike Lindell did not commit defamation. Go figure that one out. It certainly had no malice and certainly had no conspiracy against Eric Coomer. Thank you, jury. Thank you, jury. 8 people who took the time to really listen and process this case, and they did well. On the 2 defamatory statements, there was a financial settlement agreed to by the jury that they have decided Mike Lindell should pay somewhere in the neighborhood of $300,000 for the emotional damages of Eric Coomer. Emotional damages. He was already in therapy, you guys. Eric Coomer was already in therapy well before the 2020 election, okay? Can we just point that out? He's been in therapy for a long time. He was only 3 weeks clean and sober when Dominion gave him the job as the product developer for Dominion voting machines. Only 3 weeks off the old, only 3 weeks and whatever else he was doing. But whatever, Dominion took that risk. All right, so the last one is Frank's speech, and this is where we get into the $1 million that was pushed out by the fake news. And quite frankly, the conservative accounts who put this nonsense out and didn't bother to really assess this, those things damage Mike Lindell. Okay, so MyPillow completely exonerated. Mike Lindell completely exonerated. 2 statements were somewhat defamatory, but he didn't commit defamation. I don't know. Pay for his therapy. Okay, great. All right, last one, Frank's speech. I want to remind you that Fox News settled with Dominion voting machines for well over $790 million. Okay, $790 million, you guys. And of course, Newsmax is also settling with them. OAN settled with them, and then multiple other individuals settled with Eric Coomer and Dominion voting machines instead of taking them on and going to trial. And it's a unique thing about Mike Lindell. He's a fighter. It's why we all love him. It's why we stand by him. He fought for your right to be able to say what you want to say about elections, Dominion voting machines, and yes, Eric Coomer. So in the last one, Frank's speech, it was determined at the Cyber Symposium. Very interesting little, I thought this, oh my gosh, do I have a few more minutes? Can I have a few more minutes? Yeah?
Sure.
We are at okay, we're at the top of the hour, but this is really, really important, you guys, okay? We're at the top of the hour, but really quickly, I'll make it quick, I'll make it tight. Last part of this, of Frank's speech being fined the million, I think it ends up being like 1.8 million, something like that, from Frank's speech. This was really fascinating. They decided to hold Frank's speech liable for the Cyber Symposium of August 2021. Okay, August of 2021, which is crazy to me. So this is well after Coomer has bombs thrown at him. It's well after he reported to his therapist that he was feeling bad. It was well after he even opened a restaurant, by the way, opens a restaurant in Salida. I mean, he's doing great. I don't understand what the damages was by the Cyber Symposium, but okay, I don't know. I don't understand what's going on, but this is what Eric said, okay? Eric Coomer says that he was harmed mightily by the Cyber Symposium when Professor Clements was asking Joe Altman questions about this Eric Coomer Antifa call, right? Where Eric Coomer supposedly is on the call. He supposedly says, don't worry about Trump. I took care of him, blah, blah. Okay, there's no evidence of those actual lines or Eric Coomer being on the call. Okay, there was none. They were relying on Joe Altman's testimony to say that. But interestingly enough, the jury cited Professor Clements in their decision to fine Frank's speech for allowing that narrative to be broadcasted on a live program. Professor Clements was not paid. He didn't state anything emphatically. He asked questions. But it was really interesting that the jury actually cited him specifically, that they were putting him at fault for Frank's speech being fined these millions of this 1.8-ish million dollars. It's like 1.3, but then there's more emotional suffering, so it ends up being around 1.89 million dollars. But again, that is a drop in the bucket. It's not even a raindrop, not even a raindrop in the bucket of what Fox News went ahead and did by just settling with a bunch of bullies. And that's what Dominion voting machines is. That's what Eric Coomer is. He is a bully, and he has bullied a lot of people. If you haven't been seeing all of the information put out about Eric Coomer, you should go Google it. You should go search it up on X here, Eric Coomer, and see all of the disgusting things that man has done and the disgusting, filthy person that he is. And Mike Lindell had nothing to do with that. He made his own bed. He posted his own stuff on social media, his own disgusting, disturbing stuff. And I mean disgusting, on social media long before Mike Lindell ever figured out that he had gone to Chris Ruddy to arrange a non-written agreement that MyPillow could no longer be featured on Newsmax, costing the company $22 million. And it's not be featured on Newsmax as a philanthropic organization and all the good that they do for America. So that was a verbal agreement made by Eric Coomer and Chris Ruddy of Newsmax. And that was brought out in trial. That was testified to under oath, costing the company $22 million or more even. So those are the nuances of the judgment. And it's a very, very exciting day because Mike Lindell won. He won. And the portions where there are suffering, pain and suffering, change to pay to Eric Coomer, those are going to be appealed. So Frank's speech is appealing that and will not be paying that. And I don't think they'll be paying a penny, to be quite honest with you. The defense, or excuse me, the prosecution did not do a good job, quite frankly. I think it was embarrassing for them to have to represent Eric Coomer. They had to hide so much about that guy from the jury. And I'm so impressed with that jury, I do have to say. They did a very, very good job, and they acted within the information that they were given, and yet they could still see through the absolute nonsense of Eric Coomer's prosecution and his defense of himself. So I am very happy for Mike Lindell. I think this is a huge weight lifted off his shoulders. And then next week we are going to be talking, or maybe even Friday, we'll be talking with Mike specifically about, okay, so now what are the consequences of discovery? What are the consequences now of Mike Lindell being able to bring a lot of this information into the trial regarding Dominion voting machines, including expert witness testimony, as well as reports even related to Dominion voting machines? What are going to be the consequences of that? Will we see more investigations happening? I can tell you right now, I'm going to wrap up right now. I can tell you right now, investigations are happening all across the country now into the 2020 election. Kash Patel has come out publicly saying China was involved. Oh, you know who else said that? Mike Lindell. A long time ago. And now we're investigating Colorado. The FBI, U.S. attorneys have requested 4 years worth of information from the Secretary of State's office. By the way, General Dillon, do not forget Elbert County images. Elbert County images that were confiscated by Jenna Griswold under court order, because that Elbert County clerk would have never surrendered those images otherwise. But she threatened him with, wait for it, lawfare. Lawfare. Oh, the court here in Mike Lindell's trial tried to say, Dominion attorneys tried to say there's no such thing as lawfare, except in Colorado we've experienced it over and over and over again. So investigations are happening, guys. It is a new day. Stay filled with hope. Do not let anyone tell you that this country is not great and that it should not continue to thrive. And also do your part. Remember, all that's necessary for evil to prevail is for good men and women to do absolutely nothing. We'll see you guys back here on Friday.